They said she can't win on clay. She proved them wrong in straight sets against Grabber. She came 6 points away from dethroning a Grand Slam champion in Ostapenko. And now the tennis gods just handed her the most poetically perfect opponent in the entire 2026 clay season. Alexandra Eala versus Leylah Fernandez. World number 46 versus world number 25. 0 career titles versus 5. But here's what the rankings don't tell you. Both women carry Filipino blood. Both are left-handed. And both are about to walk onto the indoor clay of the Porsche Arena in Stuttgart on Monday, April 13th. In a first-round collision that is not just a tennis match, it's a cultural earthquake. Let me tell you exactly who Leylah Fernandez is. Because if you think this is just another winnable first-round draw, you've already lost. Fernandez is a former US Open finalist. She reached the championship match at Flushing Meadows in 2021, at 18 years old, defeating Naomi Osaka, Angelique Kerber, Alina Svitolina, and Aryna Sabalenka in consecutive rounds before falling to Emma Raducanu. That's not a resume, that's a war journal. She owns 5 WTA titles, Monterrey twice, Hong Kong, a WTA 500 crown in Washington, D.C., and Osaka. Her career high ranking is world number 13. She has stood on the biggest stages in tennis and traded blows with the absolute elite, and her mother is Filipino-Canadian, which means on Monday for the first time in WTA history, 2 players with Filipino heritage will face each other on tour. The Eala Army doesn't boo opponents, but the Eala Army also doesn't waver in its loyalty, and on Monday that loyalty belongs to one woman. Now here's where this matchup becomes tactically fascinating. Both players are left-handed. In professional tennis, lefties make up roughly 10% of the tour. When 2 left-handers face each other, the entire geometry of the court flips. The wide serve to the ad court that normally pulls right-handers off the baseline now curves directly into the opponent's forehand. The cross-court forehand that usually attacks the backhand now finds the forehand instead. Every tactical playbook both players have built their games around has to be recalibrated in real time. This is a mirror match, a chess game where both sides are using the same colored pieces, and that mirror creates an extraordinary test for Eala, because Fernandez is in many ways a preview of what Eala could become in 2 or 3 years. Fernandez is 23. Eala is 20. Fernandez has 5 titles. Eala has 0. Fernandez has been to a Grand Slam final. Eala has never been past the first round of a major. The experience gap is real, but the momentum gap tells a completely different story. Fernandez walks into Stuttgart with a 4-win, 9-loss record in 2026. 4-9. That is not the form line of a player operating at full capacity. That is the record of someone searching for answers, fighting to recapture the magic that once made her a top 15 player. She's been knocked out in early rounds across Brisbane, Adelaide, the Australian Open, Abu Dhabi, Doha, Dubai, Indian Wells, and Miami. The confidence that powered her through that historic US Open run is flickering. Not extinguished, but flickering. Meanwhile, Eala arrives with 15 wins and 9 losses, a 15-9 record that includes a semi-final in Auckland, quarterfinals in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, 4th-round finishes at Indian Wells and Miami, and a career-high ranking of world number 29. She beat Donna Vekic, Jasmine Paolini, and Diana Yastremska. She pushed Ostapenko to the absolute brink on clay just 6 days ago, losing by a total of 6 points across 2 sets. The momentum belongs to Eala, the form belongs to Eala, and that raw, unquenchable hunger to win a maiden WTA title belongs to Eala. In tennis, hunger is a weapon that talent alone cannot defend against. But talent is exactly what makes Fernandez dangerous even in poor form. Her forehand is a precision instrument that can change direction mid-swing. Her backhand generates angles that seem geometrically impossible. Her movement at 5'6" is compact, explosive, and relentless. She covers the court like someone 4 inches taller because her footwork is so efficient she seems to teleport between shots. And her competitive fire, the same fire that drove her through the 2021 US Open draw, the same fire that produced some of the most iconic fist pumps and screams the sport has witnessed in the last decade, can ignite at any moment. A player like Fernandez doesn't need form. She needs a spark, one early break, one emotional crowd reaction, one forehand winner that lands on the line, and suddenly the 4-9 record evaporates, and the Grand Slam finalist appears. That's why Eala must approach this match with the same intensity she brought against Ostapenko in Lens. The 88% first serve accuracy, the clinical breakpoint conversion, the tactical discipline that kept her within striking distance of a former French Open champion on clay, and the second serve. This is where the Lens match becomes a critical teaching moment. Eala's 0% second serve win rate against Ostapenko was the difference between victory and defeat. Against Fernandez, who is an aggressive returner with exceptional timing, a weak second serve will be punished with the same ruthlessness. The Rafael Nadal Academy has had nearly a week to work on this exact problem. The spin rate, the placement, the disguise, The ability to keep the second serve out of the middle of the box where Fernandez can load up and attack. If Eala walks onto the court on Monday with even a marginal improvement on her second serve, the tactical equation tilts dramatically in her favor. Because Fernandez's recent results suggest she's not finding easy rhythm anywhere. One win in Charleston before exiting. A clay court record in 2026 of 1-1. Not extensive enough to suggest she's found her groove on the surface. Not disastrous enough to suggest she can't. It's a coin flip. And coin flips in first-round matches at WTA 500 events are exactly the kind of high-variance situations where the Eala army thrives. The indoor clay surface adds another layer of complexity that could work in Eala's favor. Stuttgart's Porsche Arena plays on indoor clay, which behaves differently from the outdoor clay in Lens. The ball bounces more consistently without wind interference. The lighting is controlled. The court speed is slightly faster than traditional outdoor clay because the surface is managed to precise specifications. For Eala, who has now played 2 competitive clay matches in Lens, the indoor environment could actually be an advantage. The consistency of the bounce eliminates one variable. The controlled conditions allow her to time her shots with greater precision, and the faster court speed favors her aggressive return game, which won 36.7% of return games across the 2026 season. For Fernandez, who played her most recent tournament on the green clay of Charleston, the indoor surface presents its own adjustment challenge. She's dealing with multiple transitions, different surfaces, different conditions, different opponents, all while trying to rediscover the form that made her a top 15 player. Let me paint the picture of what sits beyond this match, because the draw is dripping with narrative potential. The winner of Eala versus Fernandez faces 5th seed Jasmine Paolini in round 2. The Italian, the 2024 French Open finalist. The player Eala dismantled 6-1, 7-6 in Dubai earlier this year, in one of the most dominant performances of her entire season. If Eala beats Fernandez and then beats Paolini, she faces either top seed Elena Rybakina or Diana Schneider in the quarterfinals. And the semi-final projection features Iga Swiatek, who now has Francisco Roig in her coaching corner, the former Nadal coach, creating a direct connection between Eala's training base at the Rafael Nadal Academy and Swiatek's new tactical direction that the media hasn't even begun to explore. This draw isn't a bracket, it's a screenplay. And sitting courtside at the final is a brand new Porsche 911 Carrera S Cabriolet, waiting for the woman who survives 5 rounds of the most competitive WTA 500 field of the season. But before any of that matters, Monday has to happen. And this is where we need to talk about what this match actually represents, beyond the rankings and the records. The establishment wants to frame this as a mismatch. World number 25 versus world number 46. 5 titles versus 0. Grand Slam finalist versus Grand Slam first-round exit. On paper, the hierarchy is clear. On paper, Fernandez is the favorite. Every prediction model, every algorithm, every bookmaker is leaning toward the Canadian. Demers gives Fernandez a 56% win probability. The rankings say she should win. The title count says she should win. But paper doesn't play tennis. Paper doesn't account for the trajectory of a player who has won 15 matches in 2026 against an opponent who has won 4. Paper doesn't measure the fire in the eyes of a 20-year-old who came within 6 points of beating a Grand Slam champion on clay 6 days ago and immediately walked into another tournament instead of retreating. Paper doesn't quantify what it means to train at the Rafael Nadal Academy every single day, absorbing the mentality of the greatest competitor the sport has ever produced, learning to treat every match as a final and every point as a battle for survival. And paper certainly doesn't account for what happens when 115 million Filipinos lock into a live stream simultaneously and channel their collective energy into one athlete standing on a clay court in Stuttgart, Germany. Fernandez knows pressure. She performed under the brightest lights at the 2021 US Open and nearly won the whole thing at 18. But she has never faced pressure from the Eala army. She has never experienced what it feels like to have an entire nation willing her opponent forward with every point. She has never walked onto a court knowing that the person across the net carries a movement, not just a ranking, and that movement doesn't sleep, doesn't rest, and doesn't accept defeat as anything other than a temporary setback on the road to something historic. Eala's career clay court record is 15-22, but in 2026, it's 1-1. 1 win over a clay specialist. 1 competitive loss to a Grand Slam champion decided by 6 total points. The sample size is small, but the trajectory is screaming upward, and if she adds a win over a 5-time WTA champion and former Grand Slam finalist on indoor clay in Stuttgart, the narrative doesn't just shift, it detonates. It explodes into 1,000 pieces and reforms into something entirely new. Something the establishment has been dreading since the moment Eala first set foot on the practice courts at the Rafael Nadal Academy as a teenager. The realization that Alexandra Eala is not a surface-specific player. She is a force of nature that adapts, evolves, and conquers regardless of the dirt beneath her shoes. Monday, April 13th. Porsche Arena. Indoor clay. The left-handed mirror match. The Filipino heritage clash. Two women separated by 21 ranking spots and an ocean of contrasting career trajectories, connected by the same ancestral roots, wielding the same dominant hand, fighting for the same spot in the second round. Fernandez has the titles. Eala has the momentum. Fernandez has the experience. Eala has the hunger. Fernandez has the Grand Slam final on her resume. Eala has an entire nation on her back, and a clay court game that is evolving in real time under the guidance of the greatest clay court infrastructure in the history of tennis. The Porsche Arena has no idea what it's about to witness. And when the first serve flies on Monday, the world is going to learn what happens when you give the Eala army a stage, a story, and an opponent who carries the same blood but stands on the opposite side of the net. This isn't just the most loaded first-round draw of the clay season. This is the match that defines whether Alexandra Eala's clay court journey is a curiosity or a revolution.